Today, Bitcoin enters the 137th day without a new all-time high. This is following the Bitcoin Nashville conference on the weekend where Trump spoke. Today's video is potentially a little bit of a triggering title for many, as if history is to repeat for Bitcoin and for the beloved Trump supporters, they could be royally fucked. I'll get into that in today's video because it absolutely surprised me how many people did not know what happened throughout history and what you can do to better protect yourself and be prepared come later this decade. All that and more, including the stock markets, cryptocurrencies, and the real estate cycle. Because you found your home of macro cycle analysis with me, Jason Pizzino, make sure you hit that like button. Let's go for 3,000 likes on today's video. Help push this message to more people, and hopefully they don't get royally screwed towards the end of the cycle. Share it with friends and family and let me know in the comment section down below. Heaps to get through in today's video. So if you are wanting to know more, link in the video description for TIA Premium is where we go through this in great detail for your trading and investing plans for now and into the future. All right, enough of the intro. Let's kick it off with the winner's curse phase. This is where we are right now. Winner's curse phase. Based on my analysis, that's why you're here. This essentially means the end of the cycle. Ends of cycles come in peaks. Basically, everything going up. We've seen Bitcoin go up, we've seen cryptos go up, but more importantly than cryptos are the stock markets and real estate. These things have continued to go up. We've shown the data here on the channel many times, and those prices just keep going up. Eventually, there will be a significant correction, and when this occurs, it'll probably be longer and deeper than most will expect because of the last 15 or so years. The corrections have been relatively shallow or very quick, like we saw in 2020. It was only a matter of a few months down and then back up, a big V-shaped recovery. So the winner's curse is essentially everything going up and people feeling a little overconfident with how good they are at trading or investing. More on that in future videos, so make sure you are subscribed. All right, so let's get into the stock market data, and then I want to cover what's happened with Trump and Bitcoin and the past. Now, cyclical recovery here for the stock markets. This is giving us nearly 30 years of data, so something interesting to look at. The average distance below a high for a basket of cyclical groups climbed within 2.5% of a 52-week high. The purpose of this model is not to provide a timely market signal, but rather to validate a transition from a bearish to a bullish trend. We've obviously seen a bullish trend on the S&P 500 now for several months, going all the way back to October 2022. So this just lines up more with that particular data, showing that the cycle continues up and that you're seeing more of these groups hitting new 52-week highs. Now, there are signals going back, 19 signals going back to the mid-1950s, and the next 3 to 12 months have shown very, very good results. So when this signal comes up, basically a lot cycling from their lows to within 52-week highs, as it says here, 2.5%, negative 20% to nearly 2.5% to those highs, so a pretty big move. Then the following 3 to 6 months has been very, very good. 84%, 6 months later, and 100% 12 months later. Basically, new highs between 3 and 12 months later. However, those earlier timeframes, 1 week, 2 week, 1 month, 2 months, might not show the gains that the later timeframes show. And we got into this specifically on the channel here, just going back a week and a bit ago, so 21st, and I brought this to you on a video a day or two earlier, where the S&P 500 showed the 3 days down. So this was the signal that we talked about for Bitcoin in March of 2024. This is just for the new folks who are joining the channel, when I would say 95% of people were calling for higher prices. This TIA specific signal showed up, and that allowed us to basically call the market and say that we did not think we were going to see much higher prices, if any higher price than that top on the 14th of March. And that's what's happened. So as I started with the intro, we're now under the high for 137 days. And going through my back testing, you guys do your own if you want. Otherwise, check out what I've got here. from this signal, what I had found was the median time frame was roughly 4 to 6 months below the top after you get this signal. And we are in that period now. 4 months was a few weeks ago, 120 days. And then going through to 6 months, that would take us out to September, somewhere around your September 11. So it's going to be an interesting day to remember there, especially with the markets themselves. It's always an emotional day, especially for the markets. So basically, we're in that time frame now to see a new all-time high. So that same signal came up on the S&P 500. I posted about it on YouTube. I posted about it on X and suggested that we'll probably see a longer correction than what we had seen in the past. So you can see there was just minor corrections along the way. Even this minor one here lasted about 9 days from the high to the breakout. Now, we got that, a little bit of a rally, and then another correction happened again. Basically, the time frame that we're looking at is somewhere around that sort of 22 to 44 days. The correction after the previous same signal, check it out here, red, about 22 days. So check it out, top to the breakout, 22 days. Now, the next longest correction for the S&P 500 was 44 days. So an exact double of the correction that happened before. Basically, I'm looking at it from the top to the breakout in this case. So there's the top, there's the breakout day, 44 days. I'm also interested in the timeframes from the top to the lows. That was 18 days or 14 trading days. Obviously, you have weekends for the S&P, whereas Bitcoin you don't. And for this correction here, when it tested the all-time high back in January, that was an 8 day. So basically half the time again, half the time to the low and half the time to get to the breakout, 8 days, 22 days. So really interesting there. And that's how I'm starting to get some time frames coming together for Bitcoin for when we should expect some sort of breakout. And what we would do there so that you can hopefully forecast it for yourself, start to measure the tops to the lows. You got 45 days. And then the other top here, which was almost an exact double top, I'll be watching both of those. You got about a 28 day. So basically a month there from the top to the bottom. Then we can measure the lows to the highs, and you got about 37, and to this top about 20. And then you can start to see where you might get some sort of correction. So low to the current high is 22 days. Should this go a little higher over the next day or two, maybe you'll get 24, 25 days. Knowing that we can go all the way to 37 days from the low and then potentially get a correction. Don't look at it thinking that you're going to get the same sort of size of a correction, although it could happen. The point is looking at those time frames. So if you find yourself getting hyped up, Trump talks on the weekend in Nashville saying, hold on to your Bitcoins, this thing's going to go up forever and we're going to start using Bitcoin as a reserve currency and all this sort of stuff. It could be true. We don't know, but it could be true. Just have a look at how long the market has been going up for into that big announcement, whatever it might be. And you might notice that markets do this over and over again. This is a very specific look at time and how they react to price in markets. That's what we've been doing with stock market and for Bitcoin as well, looking at these timeframes and potential corrections. This is essentially how many weeks they can move up and down. This is just the market's data that it gives to us. I'm not changing anything here, just looking at these numbers at the bottom. What you can see is the corrections typically last single digits. So in terms of weeks, 1 week down, 0 means it wasn't a full week. 1 week, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, you get the idea. You can basically go through all of these numbers. It might look like 10, but it's essentially 1 and 0, 2, 3, 2, 1. So if you get to this time frame of about 2 to 3 weeks, you're probably going to see a correction from that point just based on the data that the market has given us for decades upon decades. Now, if you think it's going to be different to that, it could be, but you're really playing with fire that it only happens very infrequently. Like 2008, you got about a 13-week move to the downside, and it doesn't happen all that often. So just trying to prepare us for any sort of corrections and how long they might last before we get a turnaround here. So the S&P is looking relatively okay. It's still above 50%. Same sort of thing for the NASDAQ as well. So still in this major bull market, but of course we need to see corrections along the way. They're very, very healthy for the market. Using this analysis, we can apply it to longer term charts like the monthly chart, or we can do it across any other market that has a chart so that we can get a feel or an understanding of how long the moves can last for longer timeframes in the case of the monthly here. Understanding how markets move and in what potential timeframes can greatly affect your profitability. This is what we go into great detail with our members at TIA Premium, going through courses, deep diving into time analysis and price analysis. So if you are interested to furthering your investment or your trading journey, check out that link in the video description. All right, let's push on with Bitcoin and what we heard over the weekend with Trump at Bitcoin Nashville and how this is very, very similar to the past. Now, you've got Senator Cynthia Lummis announces bill for US Treasury to buy 1 million Bitcoin worth 68 billion. So this is Bitcoin 2024. The idea here that the US could become debt-free because of Bitcoin is I guess, a great idea. Could it actually happen? Maybe, but it seems like a bit of a far stretch considering the situation they're in. Now, of course, that's just my opinion. Let's stick with history to see if we can learn something from history to better prepare ourselves for the future. So you're already starting to see this push towards Bitcoin, and it's going to be a reserve currency for the US. So right here, Trump urges to keep your Bitcoin because US will be a crypto capital, announces plans to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset. They weren't even thinking about this a few years ago, calling it absolute dog shit. Now they are going to use it as a reserve currency. Absolutely wild. Donald Trump has announced plans to designate Bitcoin as a strategic yada yada. At the Bitcoin 2024 conference in Nashville, he committed to maintaining a national Bitcoin reserve, promised not to sell any seized Bitcoin. Of course, Trump has made a gazillion promises and kept barely any of them. Trump also intends to fire SEC Gary Gensler. Of course, this is what crypto people want to hear, especially when you're hyped up at some sort of event. You know, the excitement and the level of testosterone that you'd get at something like this is probably quite high. So, of course, say what you need to say, get people on your side. That's what Trump does. Am I a Trump supporter? Don't really care. Am I the other side, whatever that is? Don't really care. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. The cycle is going to do what the cycle does. And I understand if this is the first time you're hearing, or maybe the first few, and you haven't experienced an entire 20-year cycle, it's extremely crazy to think that politics barely matters to the cycle. What will happen will happen. Things keep going up until they don't, based on what we've seen here. Now, there is over 200 years of data. The video could be hours long if I was to go through every single data point here. So I suggest reading about the 18.6 year cycle from Phil Anderson. You can get the book, spend a few days reading it, going through each of the data points. Absolutely incredible stuff. So back to this. Trump also intends yada yada. Okay, so basically, he's getting on board here to tell you to keep holding your Bitcoin. Bitcoin might be the reserve currency for the US. Then you've got people like Michael Saylor going on about Bitcoin as well. Never sell your Bitcoin. And, the US is going to buy all this Bitcoin. Okay, when I saw this, it reminded me of history. Remember where you are. We're looking at studying the past to hopefully forecast the future to our best of our abilities, putting the risk management in place, our own risk management for our own portfolios, and essentially better preparing yourself to be on hopefully the right side. Okay, so those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This was said in 1863. And of course, to come up with some sort of saying like this means this guy here, George Santayana, a Spanish-American philosopher, had probably read through history of the previous hundreds or thousands of years himself. And we find ourselves back at the same situation. Do you remember what happened to gold in the 1930s? Probably I could have said gold in the US in the 1930s. Might have been a little bit easier, but I was so surprised by the amount of people who had no idea what happened with gold in the 1930s, especially if you're in crypto and, of course, Bitcoin. What happened to gold in the 30s? What happened to gold in the 30s? What happened to gold in the 30s? There might have been one or two more here. Puzzling, they don't understand. The US seized everyone's gold. Here it is, US banned gold. United States between 1933 and 1974 made it illegal to own gold. That was from President Roosevelt, signed an executive order that essentially criminalized the possession of gold. Why the hell are they pushing Bitcoin so much now? I'm a Bitcoin lover, crypto lover. I like what it can bring, but why are they pushing it so hard now towards the end of the cycle and calling it a reserve asset, which gold was prior to the 1930s? And why are they saying that the US is never going to sell it if, of course, Trump gets in? Why are they pushing this so hard now? Okay, so they banned it then and made it a criminal act to hold gold. Could they do the same thing again to Bitcoin when Bitcoin is becoming the digital gold, if you believe that, of course? Could that happen again? I think so. I think it could happen. Phil did the talk and I emceed this on the Gold Coast back in 2022, April 22, so over 2 years ago. Will the government steal your crypto after 2026? Basically looking at a similar sort of thing here to what happened coming up to 100 years ago. So a nice cycle repeat there. So could it happen if you sort of on this side of Trump and Bitcoin and you're going to be rich and Bitcoin could be $1 million by 2030 or 2050? I've seen a few more of those pop up lately. Just be prepared in case this happens. And why are they pushing ETF so much? You know, if you have a Bitcoin ETF, you're owning Bitcoin in an ETF, which is owned by BlackRock or whoever is holding it. What happens there? Well, you don't really own it. BlackRock just essentially says, here, government, here are all of your Bitcoin that all of the the citizens of the US have now put together, pooled them with us at BlackRock. Here you go, take it for yourself. Now, if you try to withdraw that, sell it, buy your own Bitcoin, where can you keep that? Maybe on a ledger. Could they find where you've kept it because you bought it from Coinbase and sent it somewhere? Possibly. Do they have the resources? I don't know. I'm not the US. I'm not the IRS. You'd have to find out for yourself. What can you do from this? Well, you could possibly protect some of your investments, maybe through cash later in the cycle. I'm not saying sell everything now. Forget that nonsense. But you probably need to start thinking about what happens towards the end. And after that, you'd probably have to see the market come down and for shit to get bad, very, very bad, before they would implement something like this. So if things don't get extremely bad, forget this. But I think it's important just to be prepared and learn from history, at least see what has happened in history. Remember, this is 1933 that they brought this in. The stock market had already corrected from 1929 down to 1932. 1 year later, then they bring in this. Okay, so things had already gotten very bad. The stock market collapsed 80-90% in the 1929 peak to collapse, and then they bring it out. So I don't think this is going to be something that triggers a peak and then a crash. This will be something that happens after the crash. It's triggered by something else. The government or whoever needs money and they come running for everyone else's assets. Maybe they even freeze cash in the bank accounts. Maybe they take the Bitcoin from wherever. Maybe they make it a criminal act, right? So how can you best prepare for this? I think we'll have to wait and see over the coming years. I've given you a couple of ideas here as well, potentially your own real estate. And I know people will say, but what if they take your real estate? Well, what are you going to do? We got nothing. You got guns in the US? We got nothing over here. So maybe that's your next best thing. But what I'm saying is, on top of that is you'd probably have to see something extremely bad happen, unfortunately, until you get a reaction like this. This isn't something that would spark a top. It would be what happens because of a potential significant correction. A correction that has looked like everything over the last 200 years at the end of a 20-year cycle, which is exactly what we are leading up to now. So let's lighten the mood a little bit and have a look at the prices for Bitcoin and some of these major cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin still is holding its ground here, $68,000, $69,000. Any sort of correction from roughly around these prices here, we've got plenty of support to the downside between sort of $61,000 and about $64,000. So you've got the 50% levels here. You can throw another 50% from the low to the current top. Should it go higher? Of course, we've got to measure it, but to the current top is at 61.5. So there it is, 61.5 to roughly about $64,000. There is support to the downside should there be a correction. I don't think this market's going to go straight up from here. Could be wrong. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We've been looking at these lows and we found the trend reversal here that led to a very significant time correction for BTC and the deepest correction that it's had throughout this entire bull market. So let's hope we get some smaller corrections to delay this, I think, inevitable move to a new all-time high price. But on the other hand, of course, it doesn't have to happen. I just like to see balanced corrections before you get higher prices. What's not balanced is the market sentiment. This one is mostly focused on Bitcoin and other large cryptos, but essentially Bitcoin. If Bitcoin keeps going up, then the fear and greed keeps going up, keeps getting greedier and greedier. We're at 74, so basically 1 or 2 ticks off extreme greed at the moment. Yesterday was 71, last week was 70, and you only have to look back about 28 to 30 days to see that we were at extreme fear on the fear and greed index. So having a look a little more historically here, you can see it was basically a V-shaped recovery on the market sentiment, leading to those low sentiment readings back at, you guessed it, at the low. So that's the fear and greed. ETH, on the other hand, ETH BTC is having quite a struggle street here. Because this video has gone probably 20 to 30 minutes so far, this is going to come up later this week where I'll go into more detail with the Ethereum Bitcoin pairing here and that strength to the upside versus the downside, looking at the weakness here for the ETH BTC pairing. I'll just let you in on a quick one here if you want to do this yourself using, again, swing indicator. Turn on the settings here and scroll down, have a look at the bar count, turn that bar count on. If you want a link to this, it is in the video description. 7-day free trial. You get an email every day to help you use this indicator for your own trading and investing. So what you can do here is just have a look at the moves to the upside and then to the downside. I've got here, it's been 2 years since we've seen a weekly uptrend greater than 5. Yes, there is one here. So that was back in May 2023, but it was a lower high and eventually failed very, very quickly. This is the move I'm looking at. So 12 weeks to the upside with a few pullbacks, right? But 12 weeks in total. And ETH has not been able to overcome this the entire journey so far. However, ETH USD having a little better time. It is holding up above 3,200 after that quick move underneath 3,200 last week. You got Thursday, one close, and then it closed back above. So that's hopefully a good sign moving forward. Still very early days when you look at the 50% coming in at 3,325. Basically, over the next couple of days, we've got to get some closes above 3,325 to maintain that bullish structure and keep charging towards higher prices for ETH USD. Solana, on the other hand, doing much, much better than ETH. This is Sol versus BTC. So Bitcoin has been showing some strength. Solana has been showing more strength against Bitcoin at this time. Just had the weekly close above 50% and just slightly higher than the open and just slightly higher than last week's close as well. And extra volume and increasing volume on this move to the upside and a close above the previous top here, just. So a lot of very, very subtle signs that Solana is likely going to hold these lows and put in higher lows throughout this entire period that we saw Bitcoin decline here. So this is higher lows of Solana versus BTC. And I put posts out on X back in April saying strong altcoins are showing higher lows here. And so far, Solana has been one of the few that has continued to hold ground and continued to show signs of strength, closing above very key levels. So what does that mean to the US dollar price? Well, again, higher volume, so more volume coming in as the price is rising with higher closes and tests towards those previous turning points. It has now checked off the 1 week, 1 bar resistance level at 165. So there's the 50% level. We've got 2 weekly closes now going for number 3. And following that, you've got 1 week swing top. So that's it right here. So there's $189, just touched 189.30. So ideally, this is going to be that week where Solana hopefully closes above those tops to continue to put in that sign of strength, basically confirming that it is one of the more bullish altcoins to be in. Sure, it's not going to get you same gains as some piece of crap down at 200 or 300 on the cryptocurrency market cap. But if you're looking for safer, I hate saying that with cryptocurrency in the same sentence, but safer crypto returns, maybe look towards this and add it into your watch list before you start to make any sort of positions there. I will give you one more. If you've stuck around this long in the video, hit the like button. Let's go for 3,000 on the video. I've gone back to this many, many times. I'll be on X today, so yeah, subscribe there if you want to see some more posts coming up. Casper, one more here, USDT. I don't like things going like that, but they've also continued to go like that straight up. Very shallow sort of corrections, but I have to give it to it because it's still in the strong half of the 50%, so it's above the 50% level. The corrections have been higher lows, and we are on a weekly chart. So I'm looking at a longer term time frame here, not something shorter term like the hourly charts or the 4-hourly charts. And last week was the second highest weekly close in Casper's history versus USD. Doesn't mean we can't get any sort of corrections along the way should Bitcoin also correct, so it's something to look out for. Keep an eye on the swing lows at 13 cents and about 10 cents. You can see there was a fair bit of support at 10 cents. Everything would be entirely out the window if those lows get broken. Basically, if that started to break down, probably not going to do very, very well. That's a very, very strong support at the moment, and Casper needs to hold that level. For now, it doesn't seem like it's in danger. Finally, just Casper BTC. You can see it's had a bit of a decline here against the Bitcoin price over the last several weeks, but still holding pretty good. Higher lows forming above the breakout zone here, so that support resistance accumulation zone. Reasonably strong volume on the green weeks as well, and still above the diagonal. The main level to overcome now is the 50%. So you've got the 50% of the entire move, the entire bull move, and also 50% of the entire correction, which comes out at these two numbers right here. Close above that is going to be one of those final confirmations for the bulls that this thing is ready to go and blow. Like and subscribe. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you at the next video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think this is just a little bit worrying too much? Or should we just learn from history and just be prepared? Doesn't have to happen, but it's better to be prepared. Too much worry, better to be prepared. Pinned comment down below. I'll see you at the next video. Take care. Peace out.